Hello and welcome. My name is Fredrik Nielsen. I'm in product management at Epic Games. I got my start in broadcast graphics. I then found and fell in love with character animation for both feature animation and video games. Even though now I'm in product, I still try and find time to actually animate here and there. Helps me test the tools and also gives me a bit of a creative outlet. At Epic, we get to make really fun games, exciting new tools, and we get to share it all with you. So here's a bit of the agenda I'm going to go over today. So I'm going to cover a little bit about product management, what we're building, some education resources, some internal, external projects, and kind of the adoption. And then what's new in 5.6, that'll be the bulk of it. And then a little bit about the future and experimental stuff. So what is product management? Well, we focus on roadmaps for the next releases of the engine. We gather feedback. We work on mock-ups with our UX team. We test the tools and iterate back and forth with the developers. We love to jump in and use the tools we're building. We meet with lots of people, both internally and externally. We deploy new versions of the tools and help onboard new users. We make tutorials, we make videos, and we give talks like this one. So we want to minimize the need for round-tripping in and out of our tools, which all too often can break your creative flow and take you away from what you're actually focused on doing. Being able to reach in and animate in final pixels is pretty great. We are often so deep into building these tools, it's sometimes difficult to step back and just admire all the amazing work people like you all are doing with these tools. It's quite inspiring to us, so please keep it up. So if we take a quick look at all of our releases since 5.0, which came out in 22, these tools are moving fast. We've been releasing about 2 full versions every year. It's definitely keeping us busy. When it comes to the animating in engine tools, here's a quick look at all the latest versions and some of the highlights of each. If we zoom into 5.4 and 5.5 a little bit, we had some pretty exciting updates in this space: modular rigging, shot-based deformers, animation layers, layered control rigs, time warp, and lots of other great stuff. If we take a look at education and learning, there are so many online resources available for you when you're ready to hop in and learn. I've added some QR codes if you want to scan them, but they really just go to a few general links. But we have an Epic developer community that you may or may not know about. There are forums, tutorials, videos, and various posts from many of our internal Epic Games experts, and also you, the community. Also within our EDC is where you'll find our documentation, which I'll admit can be a bit difficult to keep up to date these days as we are continuously evolving the tools and upgrading them. So bear with us as we catch up again. I wanted to call out a new section that was just added, I think yesterday or today. It's called Unreal Engine for Maya users. So definitely look there and give us feedback on that. It's a new section we've been exploring. So we'd love to hear from you. And of course, there's YouTube. There's tons of incredible content on our Unreal Engine channel with amazing videos, talks, and interviews. That's where a lot of these will go up as well. There are also many other Unreal users out there putting out their own content, so we need more of this. We need you, the community, to help teach each other. Document your findings and learnings and share whatever you can. The truth is, nothing helps you learn more than just jumping in and trying stuff. Find and download some character rigs, either some of the ones we've released or from other people as well. We're working with some teams to get more animator-friendly rigs released soon. I'll get back to that in a second. There are also some very useful tools and plugins you can add to your projects. Load up the engine, add some assets, and just have fun with it. Push some buttons and see what they do. Break stuff. I wanted to also fill you in on where we're at with our internal adoption of these tools. So LEGO Fortnite continues to be completely rigged and animated fully in the engine. They've built really powerful tools that our other teams are now starting to take advantage of. Fortnite is a very large project with, as you can imagine, with many teams all working in parallel. We've also started transitioning some of these teams to fully animating the engine as well. Our cinematics team continues to put out amazing work, all done in the engine, and they have even started taking advantage of our new sequencer deformers in some of their latest cinematics. You can see a little example here of this bag that gets thrown on the table. The animator just added a lattice and kind of added a little bit more squash and stretch to it. Here's a quick look at one of our recent cinematics. This one helped us push on multi-character performance, constraints, and even deformers. So those playing cards, for example, were deformed by the animator. They didn't have to go back to rigging to add the little flex that it had. So when it comes to external projects, many studios are using Unreal for various parts of their pipeline, some more than others. We've recently partnered with Agora Studio. They've been busy learning more about rigging and animating the engine and gave us this awesome sneak peek at what they're working on. So we're excited to announce a new animation samples pack, as well as full-featured control rigs will be released sometime this year. David Hubert and I have been talking about doing something like this for the past year or so. He's built quite the studio with Agora, studio and community, and we look forward to collaborating with them much more in the future. So let's talk about 5.6. This is a lot of stuff, so let's hop through it. When it comes to our animation authoring tools, the theme for this release has very much been to focus on quality of life and usability. While we didn't really add tons of new big shiny features in this release, we did go back into areas we knew weren't quite where we wanted them to be. We dug into previous and current feedback and worked closely with our UX designers and engineers to make things more performant, more intuitive, and more capable in all sorts of ways. I'm just going to dive in and see how far we can get. Okay, so let's start with the curve editor. So we've completely redesigned our toolbar. We've consolidated icons and tools and moved a bunch of stuff around. We've embedded a fully redesigned tween slider right on top of the editor there. I'll get back to that one in a second. We've added a new lattice tool for scaling and adjusting your keyframes. We've added smart key snapping, paste relative, and so much more. If we look at some of these things together, you can see here the changes to the toolbar as I click through it. Smart key snapping. So what this is doing is it's keying whole frames and removing closest subframes. So it's a quick way to kind of clean up your motion. And then the new lattice tool too, which lets you select a whole bunch of keys and skew them and pull on corners. And it has flipping functionality, which I can show later. You can double click and flip your curves really quickly too. So. Tween tools. So we had an earlier version of these, but we've reworked them and made them prettier, more intuitive, and really focused on their usability. And like I mentioned earlier, we've also embedded the new slider on top of the curve editor. These are the sliders we currently have. Some of you may notice a new one that we added called time offset. This one shifts your animation by adjusting values instead of actually moving your keys left and right. We still look to continue to add more sliders in the future. Many animators these days have come to heavily rely on these tools, so we've been meaning to get back in here. We've added new hotkeys for driving these sliders indirectly, so you don't have to actually click on the slider directly to drive them. You can just, anywhere in your viewport, hold a hotkey and drive the slider. And that works both in the curve editor and in the viewport. By default, these sliders will work on your selected control. So if you just go to a frame and use the slider, it will add keys, add an in-between, and then blend to the previous and next values, depending on which slider you're using, of course. If you select keyframes, there's also a hotkey for swapping which slider you're using, and then if you do select keyframes, the slider will switch over to focus on the keys instead of just the controls. Here's just one more video of them in use, just a different example. But you can see here, I just had the head and the jaw control selected. I went to an in-between and then just started using the slider. So. Motion trails. So these have also been fully rewritten and made way more useful. You can switch between various looks and styles. You can even customize them to your liking, colors and size of keys and markers and stuff like that. They're way faster and more responsive. And these keys are, of course, fully editable in your viewport as well. So you can single select keys and manipulate them, or even multi-select keys and manipulate them as well. Our pinning system has been overhauled with some hotkeys to add and remove or even reset the trails that you've pinned. By default, it will just pin the control that you have selected. So if you want to add another motion trail to something, you'll have to add it to your pinned list. You can display trails on things with keys or even without keys, including sockets or bones. They work on both control rig controls as well as actors in your scene, so props, cameras, primitives, that kind of stuff. You can offset your curves, which properly takes into account rotational values. You can even move them into other spaces, camera space probably being one of the most useful. How about anim details? So this is our channel box. This one won't look drastically different, but we went back in and did quite a bit of work to make it more powerful and flexible moving forward. You can paint select your channels. You can adjust the number of decimals that are displayed. I think the default before was like 6, so we lowered the default to 2, but you can change that. You can scrub values across multiple selected channels. You can type values across multiple selected channels. You can do math on these value cells as well. You can even type or scrub values across multiple selected objects and their channels. So you can see here I select all 3 cubes and I drag the X channel and they all will move. Viewport tools. So our editor team has been working on a new viewport toolbar, and they've also started customizing this view for animation mode. We've been moving some of our animation mode tools to this toolbar, things like control rig selection, sequencer, viewport selectability, temporary pivot, motion trails, and many of the other animation mode settings have been moved. More to come there in the future. We've added a new manipulation mode called explicit mode. So for those of you familiar with gimbal mode in other tools, this is basically that. But ours also handles translates being displayed and manipulated properly. We've added mirroring tools. With some very useful new hotkeys. So you can select mirrored controls, you can add mirrored controls to your selection, you can mirror those controls both to the other side or from the other side. There's also new hotkeys for storing temporary poses and using them as like a one pose selection set, if you will. And you can also apply those again when you want to reuse them. Performance was another key pillar for us with this release. Selection is quite a bit faster. I don't think this video will play. Selection is quite a bit faster. It's a little hard to see here, but it's something you'll definitely feel. Playback has been optimized and sped up for heavier scenes, and we did that by just not drawing all those values during playback. So you can see them when you're scrubbing and animating, but you don't need to see them while your scene is playing. We even tweaked code. We tweaked some code on what is being updated live during posing, and it had quite the impact on performance and the feel of posing. In addition to all the other fixes to the curve editor, we also went in and optimized the key drawing even more. Panning and zooming with lots of visible keys should feel quite a bit better. Constraints have also been heavily optimized. More on constraints in a bit. You can see the old versus the new. It's quite a bit faster. So. Next up is the anim outliner. So multiple control rigs now. So if you have multiple control rigs within an asset, they will now be grouped under that same asset. So it just makes organization a little cleaner and better. There's a subtle color indicator similar to what we had in the sequencer. So if you pick a control, you can kind of see where that control lives. It's like a subtle kind of blue background. You can see it kind of matches what's in the sequencer there. You can even change the display to only show you the rig you're currently working on. So if you're working on the body, you'll see the body controls. If you're working on the face, you'll see just the face controls. Everything else would be hidden. And also, there is a new option to focus on what you've selected. So now when you select things, if this is enabled, the focus on selection, I think it's there. If that's enabled, it will now find that control in the list of controls before. That didn't do that before either. So with modular control rigs, you get even more functionality. You can organize your controls by modules. So you can see here now all the controls are grouped under each of those modules. You can use shift-click on the opening and closing of these groups to recursively collapse or expand these groups. You can also flatten the list of all of your modules. So if I flatten the list, now it's just a flat list of all of your modules. So if I collapse that down again, now you see these are all the modules in the rig. So arm system, spine system, leg system, etc. And Alt-click will actually select all the controls within that module. So you can think about it similar to a selection set in a way, but authored into the rig. You can also toggle visibility per module now. So this is also unique to the modular control rigs. So you can turn off just the arms or just the spine and focus just on the area of the rig that you want to work on. And there's even a hotkey for that. So you can do it in the viewport or in this view. I think it's Control-T. In addition to the all and selected rigs mode that I went over, we also added a selected module mode. So this would hide all the other controls of the rig and only show you the controls within that module or body part that you're working on. Constraints. So we made quite a few fixes to our constraint system. We added a pre-selected parent option. So if you already know what you want your parent to be, you can pre-select it and then populate it there, that pre-selected parent. We've made quite a bit of fixes and tightened up our evaluation engine as well. So I mentioned we improved performance, but we also improved what they're capable of. This means it can handle way more complex setups. Constraints are basically exposing rigging tools to the animators. So we always knew this would be a tricky area as there are always so many variables in how they're being used. Sequencer. So we've added a new sequencer navigation tool. This gives you the ability to quickly hop between shots and subsequences, and you can also visualize and adjust your settings for each shot. Things like in and out points, shot length, H-bias, and lots of other things.
Should we tell the LT?
Might be annoying, but animators know this is a normal part of life for us. If you ever tried animating audio before in Unreal, you'll be happy to know that our audio team and sequencer teams have made this now possible. It's now frame accurate, so you can scrub and you can animate, which is great. There's also a new geometry cache export plugin. So this one is experimental. So for any of you who are rigging and animating and deforming stuff in Unreal, this lets you actually dump out that cache. You can export it out and bring it to other tools if you need to go and do stuff elsewhere. Importing animation sequences into the section. So this is a workflow maybe you're not all familiar with, but if you're working on animation clips, if you have a control rig loaded, you can just import in the animation directly onto the control rig. You don't have to start with clips, bake it to a control rig. You can just have your control rig there and just import motion. So we made a few tweaks to this tool. It's been in there before, but we just added some stuff. You can now bake just 2 selected controls. So if you had a full body walk and you just wanted the lower body, you can just select the lower body and then apply that motion just to that. You can also choose a custom time range for the import. So you can say if it's a 5,000 frame animation, you just want to import the middle 200 frames, you can do something like that. We also have had this before. We never really called it out, but there's an option in there for resetting your controls or not. And this basically if it's checked, which it is by default, it will completely reset your rig to the rig default on import. So the nice thing is when you uncheck that, it means you can pre-configure your rig before you import motion onto it. So you can put the arms in IK, you can have them in chest space, you can have stretch on, whatever controls you might want to use. And you can leave it that way and then import the motion and it will solve to however you've configured your rig. So it's very powerful. There's been some really exciting new developments around relative time scale. There's a new stitching track, which can also leverage motion matching. And we're also working on all sorts of improved workflows around seamless transitions in and out of gameplay and cinematics. Some of this you may have seen this morning in the demo. Quick render. So have you ever just wanted to dump out some frames of animation without having to add a camera or set anything up? Just render your view as is? Well, now you can. You can export out an image sequence or even an MP4. It even lets you choose which application you want to look at your rendered data in, and it'll bring it up for you. You can render out wireframe or whatever your viewport is looking at. This one was very high on the list of many animators coming over from other tools, so it's an exciting addition there. Reference, so we all know reference is a very important workflow. So there's an awesome new experimental media viewer that you can easily bring in reference into your session. It could be still images, it could be image sequences, it could be video files. You can do A/B comparisons, you can blend transparency, you can 2D pan and zoom, and more. You can even clone your viewport into this reference view. So it'll just draw whatever your viewport is looking at in there, and then you could just compare things to reference. There's more to come in there too. So a few more things to highlight. The animator kit has been upgraded a bit since our last release. I think I teased this one last year, but we now unlocked the single sim and the chain sim. And again, these are just helper rigs for you as animators to use as part of your process. And they work really well now with our new constraint evaluation engine. So you can constrain things to them, you can constrain these to other things and do all sorts of fancy stuff. Did you know in 5.6 you can now sculpt morph targets in Unreal? This is pretty cool. So if you go into the skeletal editor, you can bring in whatever your sequencer was looking at, and then you can just start sculpting. So we've ported in some of our modeling tools, and now you can use these on your characters and sculpt morph targets. This, when he accepts it here, will create a slider for you. So I think he's just going to do another bulge on the nose. And if you accept this one, it will generate a slider, which then you can hook up into your rigs if you want. So you can hook that slider up, or however you want to, hook it up to. So you can see now it blends in and out of that new morph target that was done all in here. And you can even bring that slider into your sequencer. So if you wanted to keyframe and animate that, you can do that as well. There's a bit more to tidy up in the space, but we just wanted to unlock the functionality. So as we move forward with new areas, we're going to start to heavily rely on this stuff. You can now blend poses additively in the pose library. So this means instead of blending to a pose, it'll just add values from selected poses. So in this case, I've made some generic poses that are meant to be applied and mixed with each other. Things like curl, splay, and spread. This is kind of stuff we do a lot in feature animation, where we set up libraries of things that animators and stuff can use and mix and match and build poses. We do plan on revisiting our pose library pretty soon. It's an area we haven't got back to in a while. All right, so this is probably how you're all feeling right now after all that information. I know it was a ton, and that's not even all of it, but we've been quite busy, as you probably can tell. This is most of it. So if you are really curious, take a photo if you want. I'll probably post this up. We did a lot. So I'm really excited to have worked with some amazing people, the developers and the UX team and other product guys, on just fixing lots and lots of things all over especially the animation tools. So these tools will always get better when you do sprints of fixes around quality of life and usability. So if I felt like our tools were like in the 70, 75% before, now I feel like they're much more in the 90, 95% where I want them to be. So it's exciting. Here's just one more video showing some of that stuff in play. You can see the selection is way more responsive. So you just drag select and it just instantly selects. It's something you'll feel. You won't, especially with multiple characters in your scene, it's just, again, something you feel. This is that gimbal mode or explicit mode. It's just another pull down, local, world, parent, and now explicit. You'll see now you can actually visualize your rotation order. You'll see when those gimbals will happen. There's some animators that animate this way. It's a one-to-one, direct link to their curve editor and their keys that they're manipulating. So you'll lose things like the arc ball when you're in there, but that's normal. The mirror tools, so here you can see I can just flip back and forth from the left side to the right side of whatever's selected, which is really nice. And I can just mirror those controls, so I can just push this pose to the other side, whatever you select. Very useful stuff. What's next? Motion trails. So the looks and the styles I mentioned earlier, they're now up in the viewport there. So if I just want to enable the motion trails on what I have selected, I just click this icon, the trails will draw. And then as you're posing, you can see, again, how much more responsive they are. So they're very, very useful. And you can see the spacing and timing there between the frames, between your keys. The keys, of course, they're editable as well. So I can multi-select points and move them together if I want. Again, just kind of showing them in use like that. Viewport, tween tools. Oh yeah, the tween tools I think I bring up here too. So again, just kind of show this stuff all being used together. Oh yeah, that's the customization you can do. You can turn on the markers, change the colors of everything. You have like 4 different styles to choose between. And then yeah, combine that with the tween tools and they work nice. I'll skip the rest of it, stuff I showed. All right, I'm gonna hop into a little bit of a live demo. Let's see how this goes. Oh, wrong computer. This guy? There we go, okay. So animating with physics. This is a really exciting area. For you that are familiar with tools like Ragdoll Dynamics and some things like Cascadeur and things like that, there's some I spent years and years of my life animating overlap and just secondary motion, and this will help with that, I promise. So these things are all very tunable. If I go here and I just move this guy, you'll see it's a bit jiggly and wiggly, this one. It's just set up this way, but you can see how much you get for free as you're posing and manipulating, right? So this thing can be completely tuned. Oh, I think I glitched the mouse, hold on, reset that. So, and it also has self-collision with itself, right? So as I move, it will self-collide. Again, this is new and experimental, so bear with us as we fix it. You'll see it'll affect both directions, right? So as you're manipulating, it will push on the rig, and it won't go through itself. So, and the same is true of the ground. So if this works, let's see. If I lay him down on the ground, it should, yeah, we have some problems here we're gonna have to fix. I'm gonna load up another rig. Let's see. We have a few examples here. That guy hadn't loaded yet, so let's try this guy, just a human. This one has more settings exposed. So again, these are new. We're just starting to play with them, but you can already kind of see the power of them. So this guy by default does not have, he's got a little bit of settings, but everything is super stiff. So what I did is I made poses for settings. So I made some physics poses of a couple of settings that I kind of like, because all these are values on these nodes. So you can see here, if I scroll down here, you can see there's things like turning gravity on and off, turning physics on or off. These guys have all sorts of parent space, angular stuff, and very technical kind of terminology. So it's not super animator friendly. So for me, I like to make poses with settings that I like. So in this case, I have one that I've just set up for like overlap. So if I select these controls and I apply this pose, it will now put him into that state. So it set a whole bunch of things for me. It's things that I kind of had figured out. And now you can see, so if I just take these guys, and I'm gonna move them into chest space really quick. So now when I manipulate this guy, you can already see the, how useful something like this would be just for that kind of secondary motion and overlap. And you can still pose and animate too. So I can still pose the rig while all this physics stuff is happening. We're all really super excited about this and what it's gonna mean for just kind of blocking out poses and then seeing what you get with physics and then breaking it down. Because I could also bake this stuff. So if I just create some animation like this, some goofy animation, so you can see as I scrub and stuff, it's going to resimulate constantly. So it's not deterministic of what the simulation is. But if I do bake an animation sequence from this, pretty standard workflow here, baked physics, and I do that, and I export that out. So now I've written an animation sequence. So now if I were to mute this guy and replace this with the baked physics, now you'll see I have a deterministic scrubbable results from that simulation. So again, we're looking to tighten up these kinds of workflows of I'm animating, I'm simulating, I'm going to a cache, I'm going to animate again. So these kind of loops of back and forth of simulating and animating. Of course, I can still animate on top of this as well, because if you guys remember from last year, we added these layered control rigs. So if I put a layered control rig on this guy, now it added another rig that happens after the results of the cache. So I can keyframe this however I want. This is a really powerful tool for lots of workflows. So fun stuff. And then you could bake that back down to a control rig if you wanted to. There's this kind of iterative loop that you can fly into. One more guy, because physics is fun. Chase rigged up this cool octopus. Let's pull it in. He's a tiny little guy. So let's fly into him. See, tiny little octopus. Sorry. Let me close this. This guy also has physics in something like an octopus, which can be quite challenging to animate. This is just a ground plane I'm just going to pull up so that it has something to collide with. And if I move, get to that control, this guy, and I move this guy, you can see that it does all sorts of cool stuff, and it collides with the world. And there's even some colliders that we added into this guy as we're playing around with this rig. But if I move these guys around, you have multiple things that you can use to collide with. This is a crazy model too. I think it's like 3 million polygons, and it's still running at like 60 or 90 frames per second with the simulations and everything. So you'll be able to take advantage of this stuff for sure to do all sorts of complex stuff. So here, if I wanted to go in and let's see, what is the control that I'm looking for? It is called curl. So if I do this and I grab all these guys, and I'm gonna set what is it? I'm trying to remember, lock end. So if I do this, and I use the new anim details, I can just unlock all of them. And then if I turn on gravity, and I do this, and I set all these to 1 as well, now I get dangly gravity on him. So again, that's what I mean. It's like finding settings and playing with the rig and doing all sorts of cool stuff. But yeah, if you had to hand animate this stuff, I mean, some of you guys in this room probably animated octopus before. It's a pain in the butt. So yeah, exciting stuff. How are we on time? Oh, I'm way ahead of time. Okay. All right, I'm gonna hop back to my slides. Do this, and where's my clicker? Here. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what we're working on next. So again, it's subject to change because we're just laying it out now and we're trying to figure it out. If you guys send us some cool feedback of stuff you want from us, we might shift gears, and who knows? It's pretty organic. So we're going to focus on high-end facial rigging. So rigging techniques, unlocking. We talked to a lot of studios, and no studios rig faces the same way. Some use morph targets, some use wrap deformers, some use spline deformers, some use, you name it, lattices. There's all sorts of techniques. So we just want to unlock more of those techniques. We know we've added some of them with the deformers, and there's a lot of bone-based kind of rigs that have always been in Unreal, but we want to take them even further. And of course, they're going to be fast and usable. Another really cool area I'm really excited about. So in addition to the rigging tools, we're also going to look at improving the interface for animators interacting with their controls. So we're going to allow you to expose your controls directly on the deforming skin of your character. This should greatly reduce the clutter of your viewport and make your artists feel much more directly in tune with the characters that they're animating. So there's a lot that's going to have to be unlocked here. Authoring the controls to the skin, you can already see we have it up and running. And you'll see it gets really interesting with faces. You hover over areas that you want to touch, and then you basically click and drag, and it goes into manipulation mode without having to pre-select things and then manipulate. But again, we have to figure out how does that talk to the rest of our systems in Unreal? Where do we need to link up, channel selection and gizmo selection to this? So there's definitely stuff to figure out. Luckily, I've done this before because I worked at DreamWorks where we built it together with her right here. So this is exciting. I think it's only Pixar and DreamWorks that have this kind of tech. So we're excited to bring it to a tool like Unreal. And I'm done early. I can load up the engine and play with stuff, but I can also open it up to some questions if you want. I could do both.